My name's Dane Persky, and welcome to the Point Loma Nazarene University 2025 Writing Symposium Special. This podcast episode features an interview with Dean Nelson, director of PLNU's journalism program and host of the school's annual Writing Symposium by the Sea. Every year, 3 acclaimed writers are invited to share their insights with the Point Loma community at the Writing Symposium, an event founded and hosted by Nelson. I recently caught up with him to learn about the history of the event, what drives its continued popularity, and what's in store for attendees this year. I really hope you enjoy.
It is this wonderful archive of literary greatness. Jesmyn Ward will astonish you, Sandra Cisneros will challenge you, and Mitch Albom will melt you. I'm Dean Nelson. I've been at Point Loma for decades. This is going to make me sound like I'm 100 years old, but I've been here now for 40 years. And they hired me to start the journalism program. So that's what I've done. I thought I'd stay here a couple of years and then go back to my roots in Minnesota, and I ended up never leaving. Kind of the every Californian story, I think. And then after I'd been here about 10 years, started the Writers Symposium by the Sea.
And was that in 1997, the first Writers
No,
Symposium?
the first one was 95. So
Okay, it was 95.
we're having our 30th year is this year.
Gotcha. So take me back to that time, around 1995. How did you come up with the idea for the Writers Symposium by the Sea? Yeah, take me back to the kernel of that idea.
When I was in grad school, both at University of Missouri and then at Ohio University, they would bring back, it was usually alums, but they would bring back somebody who was in the field of journalism or writing or publishing or something. They would bring them back to campus, and the students would just be able to interact with these writers and ask them questions and get maybe some job insights and advice and things. But it was just inspiring to have these folks who were doing what you were trying to prepare to do. And so when I finished my doctoral program, I came back here and thought, that'd be a cool thing to try to do here. Is to not necessarily bring back alums because we didn't have that many yet, but bring in professional writers. And they could be journalists, poets, magazine writers, whatever. And so I did that and then thought it'd be cool if we had a big name kind of person as well as these kind of local reporters and poets. And so there was a writer that I had been very, very attached to because of one particular book. His name is Joe Wambaugh, and he had written a book called Lines and Shadows. And this was a book about the U.S.-Mexico border. And I read that book because I was doing a lot of reporting about the border for the Boston Globe at the time while I was still teaching here. Somebody gave me that book and said, if you want to understand what's going on in the border, you got to read this book. So I read it. It was breathtaking. It is one of the few books that I can say I could not put it down. And then I heard Wambaugh lives in Point Loma. So I thought, let's get him over here. So I didn't know how to reach him. Somebody gave me his fax number. This tells you how long ago this was. So I sent him a fax just saying, praised him and told him how important his book was and said, we'd love to have you come and maybe read something and give a talk about writing. He had done other books that had been made into Hollywood movies and stuff. And I got this very brief note back from him that said, basically, no, I don't do public appearances like that. I don't do readings. Yeah, he just kind of blew it off. But then he had this one little line at the end of his response, his faxed response that said, but if somebody wants to ask me some questions, I guess I could come do that. So I thought, all right, let's do it. So I read every single one of his books before he came, prepared an interview based on, the stuff I had read, and I was just over-prepared for this guy. We had him come and just sit in front of an audience of maybe 60 or 70 people at the Furmanian Conference Center up here on campus. And we had UCSD TV come and televise it because they knew it was rare for Wambaugh to do a public appearance. And it was a really popular show. And Wambaugh and I hit it off. And this thing of, hey, we could bring a writer to campus. They wouldn't have to prepare anything. I do all the work. Let's bring them in here and just have them talk about writing. That was kind of the genesis of the format that we have now where we do these interviews. We've broadened it considerably now where We have them do writing workshops in the afternoons, and then we have a dinner, and then we do the interview, and maybe some other stuff too.
Yeah, since you had Joe Wamba in 1997, how has the event changed since then? You know, what's that, 28 years ago?
We just thought, okay, we'll bring in one person per year and do this. And I think maybe the next year we brought in the writer Anne Lamott. And that was huge. Anne Lamott filled Krill Hall, and it just was kind of like, hey, this is a thing. People will come to hear this kind of interaction. It was a little bit, I don't know if you've ever seen the television program Inside the Actors Studio. It's kind of like that, but I'm not as kind of creepy as that guy. At least I don't think I am. But he would just really get into the nuts and bolts of acting. And that's what I wanted to do with these writers. I wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of writing. And it attracted a crowd. So just over the years, we just started expanding the number of days. And we got a little more funding for it. The television thing through UCSD TV made it even more popular. And so now we've just kind of hit this stride of 3 days, a different writer each day, and try to make it something really, really special.
How do you find the guest writers that end up getting selected for each writer's symposium?
What you're asking is, do we have a criteria for who we ask? At least I think that's a little bit behind what you're asking. Am I right? Like, why these folks and not those folks?
Well, yeah, just generally, there's, writer is a really broad term. You could select a lot of people across even multiple mediums.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you kind of narrow in on the people that you want to select? It sounds like you at least knew that Jesmyn Moore was coming by last fall, so
Yeah.
you have some time beforehand to get immersed in their work. But yeah, how are they selected from the very beginning?
I would love to tell you that there's a formula that we're looking for, but there's not. I'm always looking for who are some people that we could bring in front of our students and in front of the broader writing community in San Diego and say, here's a person who has a body of work that's really worth paying attention to. And it's had an impact on the culture. And it's an example of great storytelling. And in some way, I want the audience to feel like they want to aspire to that level. They want to be able to write like that. I'm looking for somebody who can inspire somebody and model great writing so that we can celebrate that writer, but also the message being to the audience, somebody that we would say, aspire to this kind of writing. So that's not everybody. There are some very popular writers who I would say, yeah, I'm not interested in creating more writers like that.
Sure.
They're super popular. But then there are others where I just think, yeah, if more people could write like this, that'd be good. That's kind of what's in the back of my mind when I'm looking for people. So I'm always on the lookout. It could be songwriters. We've had some, one of the original members of the band, the Byrds, Chris Hillman. We brought him in and had him not only talk to Dr. Carl Martin, but he and a mandolin player did a show afterwards. We brought in a filmmaker, one of our alums, Destin Daniel Cretton, and just talked about writing from the perspective of writing screenplays. So we brought in musicians, some people that I just happened to meet. Richie Fure, who was part of the original band of Buffalo Springfield. I ended up in the Dominican Republic at the same time he was. We got to talk, and I thought, we ought to bring you out to our campus and talk about songwriting. So it can seem kind of random, but I'm looking for somebody who has a body of work.
Tell me about a particularly memorable moment from one of the symposiums.
2 years ago, we had this Native American writer, N. Scott Momaday. He was a Pulitzer Prize winner for his book, Housemaid at Dawn. We had him under contract to come to Point Loma. And he was an elderly guy. He was just coming from Santa Fe, New Mexico, so it wasn't that far. But he started having some serious health problems. And finally, his representative and his daughter contacted me and said he can't travel. And so because I had such a good relationship with UCSD TV, I just contacted their producer and said, what if we take the Writers Symposium to Scott Momaday and still do it, only we do it at his house, if he's down for it. UCSD immediately went for it because we have this wonderful relationship and this great track record of putting on great programs. And so they sent a crew with me. We flew to Santa Fe and had to rent some additional lighting equipment and stuff once we got there. Went to his house. He's in a motorized wheelchair, still very alert and everything, but clearly physically failing. And we did the entire thing. And I had him read a poem at the end, which was a poem that he had also read at UCSD back in the 1960s. And so in their production, they wove in that old video with him as this elderly, frail guy. And that's the only program where we've won an award from an organization called the Telly Awards. We won a Telly Award for that interview. And then a few months later, Amadei died. And so it was like one of these, I'm so glad we have UCSD TV and their professionalism that they paid their own way, and it was just awesome.
So moving to this upcoming symposium, give me a quick snapshot about each of this year's guest writers, Jesmyn Ward, Sandra Cisneros, and Mitch Albom. And what are you most excited to ask them about?
I think one of the strengths of Jesmyn Ward is her ability to speak from a region of the U.S., the way William Faulkner used to be able to write from the South, or Flannery O'Connor would write from the South. Jesmyn Ward writes from the South. She writes from the New Orleans or Mississippi kind of region. And you read one of her novels, and as she's describing stuff, you just feel yourself sweating from all that humidity and from the oncoming hurricane. You just feel it. And the characters that she develops in those books are so real and so raw. I hate to just say that she's a lot like so-and-so, but a lot of people have compared her work to Toni Morrison, and I think that's a pretty good comparison, to be able to capture that Southern character region and deal with really deep themes about family and about relationships and about identity. Her books, in my view, are astonishing. I've got this line that I just kind of kicked out earlier this week that said, Jesmyn Ward will astonish you, Sandra Cisneros will challenge you, and Mitch Albom will melt you. That's kind of how I'm viewing each of these. Sandra Cisneros, she's all over the place with her, not only coming from a Latino perspective, but also growing up in urban U.S., in Chicago, and just trying to figure out who she was and why she didn't feel like she fit in. That's why House on Mango Street is still so important. House on Mango Street is being made into an opera that's debuting this summer. So it's going to get even bigger life than it already has. And her poetry is so funny and concrete and carnal in all the good ways. Mitch Albom, I've read his sports columns for years. And then when he wrote Tuesdays with Morrie, I found that so moving that I used it when I taught freshman writing here at Point Loma. And students still say that was one of the most significant books that they read. And then his novels are also very, very moving. So all three of them bring something different to the literary party, but they're all, I think this is the Super Bowl. This is the Super Bowl everybody missed last week.
Well, great. In closing, what's next for the Writers Symposium by the Sea? Is there any information that we didn't get the chance to talk about that you want to bring up?
I'm already working on 2026. I'm already thinking about next year and the year after that. So I hope I can do this for a long time.
Any surprise reveals for the upcoming one?
Oh, yeah, I'd be happy to tell you. So there's a longtime New Yorker writer, a woman named Jamaica Kincaid. She's coming. And George Saunders, who is one of the giants in the writing field, he's coming as well. And we've got another person who's on the bubble who hasn't confirmed. So,
Sure.
So far, so good.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for chatting with me, Dean. Yeah, thanks so much and appreciate it.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening, and please look forward to the 2026 Writers Symposium by the Sea coming up next year. Bye for now.